Hey, welcome back to Electric People. We had Chris Avery on the show today, co-hosted with Grant Schaul. He's his director. And it was a lot of fun. We dubbed him the Forrest Gump of solar because Chris Avery has done some wild stuff that not everybody does and performed at a high level. And we found out about most of it right here during the conversation. Chris has been here for 2.5 years, was a performance pro most recently, and then out of nowhere hit franchise. Literally from one quarter of having virtually no pipeline because he was mostly developing other people's sales, made the turn, jumped, and hit franchise, and now is one of our top 30 installing reps in the entire company. So I loved his mindset. We kind of like articulated that there's a different thought process with franchise. It's not always, and in fact, most of the times it's not even a different skill set, but rather a different set of beliefs and actions. So he articulated it well. This one's a really fun one. Enjoy this episode with Chris Avery. The street is where we create. We call it suburbanpreneurship.
Mixing big company resources with an entrepreneurial spirit.
This is Electric People. Fellas, thanks for being here today. I got a SoCal submergence on me, a San Diego blitz here.
Yeah, that's true.
Thanks for being here, Chris.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ty. Appreciate it. It's an honor.
We got Grant Schaul here providing color commentary.
I'm going to do my best.
What's something awesome? What are you excited about in your life right now?
Excited about my learning to surf.
Yeah. The hardest thing in the world.
Yeah.
Learning to surf is so much harder than learning to sail, don't you think?
Yes. That and my daughter's swim lessons. That's probably the most excited thing I've been.
Oh, I thought you said the hardest thing, like getting a 3-year-old to do something.
But it's connected because they're helping me learn to surf. But like,
that's the cutest.
You just watch them day one getting waterboarded in a pool against their will, and they say this is how they learn, and then now they swim, dude.
You're like, some lady came over and tortured my kids, and now they swim.
Yeah, that's exactly how I feel in the ocean. I'm out there with Sean Watson just drowning,
just getting
He's laughing, and I'm just like, my kids learn to swim, dude. I gotta just keep going.
He's taking you to swimming lessons. Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, well, Chris, I don't know if a lot of people know your background and your story, so thanks for being on. So I'm really fascinated with you. I mean, you've been here a couple years, and it seems to me, 3 years, almost 3 years?
About 2.5 now, going on 3
years. Okay. It seems to me from like just seeing like the list of who's coming in, who's moving up into performance, or who's we look at our franchise list. We have a franchise thread. To me, it looked like from 1 second to the next, you kind of like flipped a switch. I don't know if that's what it feels like to you, like from being in the weeds, but I'm excited to tell that story. Before we jump into that, give us a little bit of your background. How did you find Sunrun? How did you become a direct seller?
Yeah. I mean, Sunrun came to me pretty much out of my last journey. I came from jumping out of a sport of bobsled, and one of my best friends in the sport, his name's Mike Fote, his brother Brent Fote, market leader in the Atomic region. Everything that I've earned in Sunrun, really, I owe to him. He's the one that reached out to me. He was in my situation 4 years prior. He thought I'd be a good fit for the job. I had a lot to relate to with him jumping out of his military career, take the leap into Sunrun. Really, honestly, it was just following in his footsteps. He showed me the ropes. He referred me down to Taylor Turnbull down in San Diego. And from there, I just kind of hit the ground running into this new journey. It was a wild ride to start out, but a lot was owed to Brent. And from there, I've just been trying to catch my breath and keep going.
My kids and I, every Sunday, we'll watch a movie, and a lot of times they ask me, like, hey, what's a movie that's awesome from, like, when you were a kid?
Yeah.
I hate, like, old movies, but my kids, like, love them. And so last week we watched Cool Runnings, and it was
best,
dude. It's so funny.
Best, yeah.
It's so funny because we were driving home last night. I had 2 little kids in the car, and my son Riot, he's 4, I think. No, he's 5, and he said, fact check, he's 5.
Yeah.
We're driving, and he says, "Rome, you dead?" And Rome goes, "Yeah, man, Rome's 8." And I'm like, dude, they just like.
That works.
But in the movie, it's funny because it's they say sprinters make the best bobsledders, but bobsledders make the best sellers.
Yeah, is that right? Yeah, okay.
It seems we're 2 for 2.
Yeah. I mean,
on national bobsledders coming in and crushing this game.
You know, I would say it's definitely not the physical aspect because like walking around.
Dude, I'm changing my whole recruiting principle from now on. I'm just going to be targeting
bobsledders.
That's
dude.
right. I mean, bobsledders, you're training to run for a very short distance. So I'd definitely say like getting into doors, walking around for hours, that was a challenge.
There you go.
Coming out of it.
Where are you from?
I'm from San Diego.
Oh, okay.
From San Diego, California. Yeah, so it definitely wasn't a sport that you find yourself in growing up. It was something just totally random that fell into my lap that I thought it was something that I'd be good at or something that I desired.
But were you a runner before? Or?
You know, I would say with my athletic background, it was pretty diverse. So baseball was primary sport growing up, football, baseball, track in high school. Going off to college, didn't go to school for any sport. Believe it or not, this is probably something Grant didn't know, but I was actually one of the male stunters on the University of Oregon cheerleading team. Very random. I was just curious.
You're becoming the most interesting man in the business, dude.
It was very random. I know. It was just I saw these guys who were all former athletes just throwing up human beings in the air, and I was curious about what that was about.
It's like Forrest Gump. I watched Forrest Gump on a plane. When was the last time you guys watched Forrest Gump?
It's been
a hot minute.
It's worth a rewatch. It holds up. It's super good.
Yeah, it's a timeless movie.
I just watched. So that's Robert Zemeckis directed that movie. You know, it's Tom Hanks and Robin Wright, and they just had a new movie come out called Here. Have you guys seen this movie?
I haven't seen
or
it.
heard about it. It's about this house that they live their life in. So the whole movie is like shot from like one single view.
Yeah.
And they CGI'd Tom Hanks and Robin Wright to perfectly look.
I've heard about this movie.
Like they're like in their 20s, and it doesn't look weird. It's amazing because you know what Tom Hanks looks like. 'Cause we saw, you know. Anyway, back to the reason I brought that up is it's like your life is like Forrest Gump. It's like, I was a shrimp boat captain, and then I was a war hero. It's like, I was a top cheerleader, and then I was a bobsledder, and now I'm a franchise door-to-door seller. It's like, if you sat down on a park bench next to an old lady, they'd be like, what? And then what happened?
I know. I wish I could have said I was like running back at the University of Alabama, but
well, in my mind, that's exactly what you were.
I appreciate that.
I bet on the drive down, you did not think you were going to be the Forrest Gump of solar.
Yeah, dude, the Forrest. That's going to be the title of this.
Yeah,
Chris Avery, the Forrest Gump of solar. I'm writing that.
So how did it get into bobsled?
So bobsled, I mean, truth be told, I just find myself, and I think this related a lot to Sunrun, it was pure curiosity. I just find like a good kind of mantra in life, just remain curious to different things. Like you're taking up surfing, Grant. Like Ty, it sounds like you've been surfing as well. You have a coach now. In college, it was a curiosity of like, hey, what's this sport? How are they throwing up these human beings? After, going into the workforce, into the real world after school, bobsled was just something that struck curiosity inside me. It was something that I thought, hey, I think based off my athletic background, it's something I could do. And I actually tried attending combines. I was by no means like a stud or thoroughbred in bobsled. I was, I would say, a good teammate is the best way to describe me. But I actually failed.
Hey, the measure is better because you were there. If you can answer that, then you're on the right track. If you were the weak link, then it's time to move on to something else or develop. But
and it was
better because you're there. That's all you need to be.
It was great. I loved it. It was a challenge at the time. It was a curiosity. Then I took it more seriously.
So how'd it come to you though?
Really no special story except
you're
for the fact
just sitting around getting curious about bobsledding.
Yeah, quite literally. Yeah.
Really?
I was working as an independent personal trainer in San Diego.
Okay.
That's what I was doing, and it was a very casual interest at first. Like I would attend these annual combines, not really doing much to prepare for it.
A combine like a football combine?
Similar, very much so. So like
are they just overall athletic combines, or they're bobsled combines?
So they're geared towards bobsled. So the bobsled.
I feel like
coaches,
I missed a step.
Yeah, we're missing a step.
You were training, and then all of a sudden you find yourself at a combine. There's got to be something in the middle.
Bobsled
I wouldn't, just to be clear, I wouldn't even know where to find a bobsled combine. I have no idea.
It kind of comes down to self-research. At the time, the coaches would travel the nation, and they would host these combines where they would put athletes through different exercises, very similar to a football combine. So there was a sprint, a throw.
So you're researching bobsled.
Yeah.
You're curious about bobsled. And
Starts with the Google.
You're like, all right.
Starts with the Google.
When are these guys in town?
That's it. Yeah.
I'm showing up.
Yeah, that's
and you just inserted yourself into the bobsled.
Quite literally as amateur of a story as possible. Just like, hey, what does it take to be a bobsledder? That's about it. And I would show up to these combines.
Dude,
and each year I would hit metrics that were nothing special by any means, but it was definitely at a point where I was like, hey, if I just committed to actually doing well at this, I think next year I could do pretty well if I actually took it seriously. So I did a year's worth of just serious training, very much like went into a regimen just like any athlete would, or anybody trying to shoot for a goal. The next year hit the metrics to be invited out to Lake Placid, New York, and found myself going through various trials, and I was fortunate enough to make my first national team in 2018. So It was a great time. Really, and no crazy story. No one pulled me into it. No one said like, "Hey, you should go do this." It was just, "Hey,
It's
this
a
looks
pretty
fun."
crazy story, dude.
Yeah.
For me, it's a crazy story.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, wow.
So I'm bobsledding now.
Yeah.
You know, you're at a dinner party. You haven't seen
Yeah.
someone for a while. What's new? Well, I'm on the national bobsled team.
Yeah.
I'd have a lot of conversations like that. It was very. I think
Yeah.
it struck people very random. Like they're like, wow,
People from high school are like, "Do you hear what Avery's doing?" Like,
Kinda. Yeah. It was. I had to reveal that to folks, and they're just like, that makes no sense
so
whatsoever.
when you're on the national bobsled team, are there like local tournaments? Like, how does it work?
So
like,
with Team USA, every year, any sport you guys see in the Olympics, anybody sees in the Olympics, you know, most folks see those athletes once every 4 years.
yeah.
Unbeknownst to a lot of folks, that each one of those sports typically has a circuit, a World Cup circuit,
Yeah.
international competition circuit every year, every season. You know, they have national teams, you have various competitions. So with Team USA, there's a whole entire World Cup circuit every year. There's an American circuit of racing. So in bobsled, you have various teams, so sled teams, and you compete every year. There's a whole entire season.
So how many stops? Like you hit like Aspen and
Yeah.
then like Vermont or what? Like how does it work?
So if depends on what racing circuit you're on. If you're on the World Cup circuit, there's typically, I want to say it's about 9 races a year.
It's like the NFL.
Yeah, 9 races a year, and it concludes with a world championship. So, for example, like this year's world championships are actually in Lake Placid, New York. So it's a big deal for the United States. But every year there's a season going on behind the scenes, and every 4 years they're going to take a certain amount of those athletes and select them for the Olympic team. So,
And like people come out and there's like bobsled gear and an industry
yeah,
and like
yeah. I didn't know that at first. You know,
Yeah.
I showed up to Lake Placid, New York, not knowing what a real winter jacket was. I wore a shell, which I didn't.
Yeah, you're
know
from
was
San
an-
Diego.
Yeah,
Like that's
definitely.
not going to cut it here.
Yep, nope. I came in tennis shoes with a windbreaker. I was not cutting it at all. So I had to learn a lot, but I met some of the best of friends in that journey. I'm pretty thankful for it, and it led me to where I am today.
I love the remain curious thing. That was something that one of the Sunrun founders, Lynn Jurich, she was only my CEO for kind of a short time because once we had sold and transitioned to Mary. But that's the one thing that I learned from her.
Yeah.
Is she's done a lot of like all leaders have like a lot of developmental work like on herself. She's like she knows who she is, and the one thing that I would take away from that time is curiosity over certainty.
Yeah.
That literally, I actually had I was in Utah the other day doing some interviews for some leaders that are about to transition into the next step of their career. And so they got to go around and interview a bunch of the executive team and get like a list of like what they're doing great and what things they should work on and stuff like that. And when it came to my turn, I had said the most mistakes I've made in my career in senior leadership is times where I was certain.
Yeah.
Because
funny
the
how it
more you
happens.
move up, the levers you pull have a bigger impact, right? And so it's like when you walk in there and you're so certain,
Yeah.
you know, the nuance that other people might have or whatever, like that not giving way to curiosity can really bite you. And I've noticed that a lot of the leaders, like the higher up they get, they ask a lot more questions. They're not sure. They gather the data. They have hunches and they have intuition and they have like real rooted like experience that guides them usually to the right answer. But they have this ability to be like, why do we do it this way? And what do you think would happen if we did this? You know what I mean? And so that's like a really good like mantra for life. And I could see it like as you came in, like the developmental patterns that you get in a sport or in a hobby or in school, they're the exact same as the ones here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the curiosity here. Well, maybe tell us about how that has applied to this.
I mean, a complete transfer. Less crashing on your head. I would
You crash
say.
in bobsled a lot. We're back to bobsled.
Yeah,
This
we're
is,
back.
No.
I'm gonna get so ridiculously into bobsled, dude.
We need to have Brent here, guys. I know Brent. He's a super impressive human being and a great leader. But yeah, he would have some good stories too.
I need to get
So,
those out of him. What if I just
Yeah.
got way into
I didn't know you crashed a lot in bobsled. I thought it was like once
Well,
you kind of had it, you
I'll put
had
it this way: if you're on a good team, you don't crash as often. But I found myself.
I mean, it's
crashing
pretty
often,
like
yeah.
crashing. It's like I mean,
Crashing's gnarly. In
that
a
thing's
bobsled, right?
what 600-700 pounds, and then your little head's just popping out the top.
Yeah, you know, you just hope when you're the guy in the back, you can't see the track. You hope for the best. You hope you're going to trust in your
Are
pilot.
you in the back?
Yeah, so there's a pilot, a driver. He's the
Yeah.
one steering the sled.
Yeah.
And then as the push athlete, you're just kind of the workhorse. You
Yeah.
push the sled in the beginning, you jump in, you put your head down,
And you try
just,
to roll with them, right?
That's, in cool runnings, everybody sees the bathtub scene where they're leaning to the side. Your goal is actually to remain as still as possible.
Oh, really?
So when you're going down this track, the pilot's going to steer the sled through these turns. Your goal is essentially almost bracing and flexing your body for a minute just to remain one with the sled. Because if you're leaning and throwing off the sled, that's where you're going to start to get it to tip over. And you're going anywhere from 70 to, I think the fastest clock time is somewhere in the high 90s up in Canada for these sleds. It's not the most fun when you crash. It's really not. You can get sucked out of the sled. People have had it, my first year in the sport, one of our top pilots he broke his neck.
I would think that'd be easy to break your neck with your head out and that sled and like the tight track and
Honestly,
stuff.
there's so many things that can happen. Someone from, I believe it was a team from Switzerland this past season, he got sucked out of the sled, and the sled came backwards in the track after crashing, and I think it shattered his pelvis and broke his femur, I want to say. So all sorts of things can happen. To me, it was a part of the journey. It's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Jeez.
Like I said, if you're on a good team, the expectation is not to
going,
crash.
Yeah, going back to curiosity though, it's amazing to me because I'm thinking, dude, it is kind of random. You Google search it, but you just were like, all right, let's just do it. And I feel like there had to be so many moments where you're in some faraway location, you're all suited up, and you're like, what am I doing?
Yeah,
It was
is this dumb? Is
Like,
this a good
I'm
idea?
here?
Yeah.
No, it was surreal.
Yeah, and so now to be here, like it is weird. Like we've had a lot of athletes that the ones who perform at really high levels just transition so well here. I don't know what that is, but I think of so many like just high performing athletes that come in, and I think a lot of it's like that mindset of like, yeah, why not me? Like, let's just try it. Like,
yeah, I think why not me? The mentality of why not me, the ability to set a goal that creates a lot of uncertainty in your life, but having the certainty in yourself to see it through. Setting, stepping stones as to, okay, I can see myself there in the future. Let me try to navigate my journey to that. And it's never certain, but kind of like what you were saying, Ty, I feel like you learn the most about yourself when you don't have all the answers, because you can't see the path ahead of you. You're learning as you go, and you're giving it your best shot. You're going to fall quite often. But when I look back at all the times that I had the most fun, made the best of friends, it's really during times in which I didn't know what the answers were going to be. I didn't know what the next month had. It was, hey, I have faith in this. I'm surrounded by people who I trust. Let's see what happens. So I've found I'm pretty grateful for each journey that I've had in this, as you said, like I guess Forrest Gump life.
Forrest Gump of solar.
Yeah, sure, we'll have that. I'm pretty grateful for the people that I've met and the experiences that I had. And truth be told, it's kind of seeking uncertainty in a way. If I'm to truthfully look back at it, like seeking the times in which I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, that's a growth mindset, right? Like the defined, that's a growth mindset. A fixed mindset would be, I could never do that because, and a growth mindset is, well, hold on, there's got to be, I don't know how to do it, but there's a way, people are doing it, so it can be done. If it can be learned, I can learn it, right? And I really think that that's what it is. There's also kind of a looseness. I've talked about this a lot on this, but there's a patience and a calm to experts. Especially now, like everything is so immediately available, right?
Yeah.
Like, and like you can, I even think about this. I was laying in my bed last night and was trying to like, settle in and like chill my brain. It's been a gnarly couple days. And then I have this lizard brain is like, oh, I wonder if that new shipment of wetsuits came in. I'll grab my phone. Anything I want to know, I can know in a second. Or like, I had another thought. I've been trying to think of what it was. It was the most random thought, and my brain was like, "You need to look right now."
Yeah.
It was something like I can't remember what it was. Well, I'll remember it in like 30 minutes and be like, God, jelly bean flavors or whatever. But it's like there's such a thing where your brain can have the thought and then you can have the information. And so oftentimes people kind of lose that skill of sit with the uncertainty for a second. I don't know, but there's like when you sell with an expert, you'll notice the experts don't come in with wild energy. They're like pretty calm, not knowing. Mm-hmm. They'll go in and they'll be like, I don't know if I can sell this person. I'm trained. I'm going to try. We'll see what happens. And then that calm kind of permeates. But someone that's so certain, and I got this, it feels like a shaky sled a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like that's the formula. It's like, I love how you said it too, seeking uncertainty. I've never heard it that way, but it's like, if you think, most people, I think what you want is to be stable, secure, certain, and so they just want to arrive. There is something weird, like high performers say, like, I constantly want to progress. I want to seek the unknown and figure it out. Mm-hmm. The other side of the formula, though, you said, I also have this like resolve that I'm going to figure it out. Like, I'm just going to, I know I can see it through. Where do you think that comes from? Like, where was it? Is it from your childhood? Were you competing at a young age? Like, what was it that you just built that part of yourself that's like, I don't know, I just kind of have this thing where I know if I put my head down and go to work, I'm going to like, I'll figure it out.
I mean, I would say just like anybody, there's things that you go through in your childhood. There's various trials and tribulations. There's really nothing more to it except I grew up pretty much as an only child. I'm not an only child. I have brother and sister as well, but everybody was much older than me. I'm the youngest of, I think, 21, 22-ish grandchildren on my mother's side. So a lot of things that I was learning was by myself. And
dude, I thought you were just going to say children, and I was like,
right?
whoa.
I know. God bless my mother, right?
Dude, he put some work on me, Chuck.
I know, right? No, it was really just, I would say, whether it was sports or just life experiences, when you're young, you don't quite know the meaning of failure. You see it as I failed. You feel raw emotion of disappointment. You feel fear a lot of the time. And I think as you grow, you learn that you're actually, those emotions are what mold you to be the best version of yourself. So when you feel fear, is it really the fact that you're afraid, or is it the fact that, are you more just uncertain? And hey, if I just take a step back or remove myself from the situation, can I learn from that moving forward? So I think it was just more learning these emotions that you're feeling at a young age. How can you apply that into something productive or something that you can create? So I think just kind of grasping, like, for example, nerves. I think nerves are a very natural human emotion that everybody feels, whether it's nerves knocking on a door, nerves pushing a bobsled, nerves taking your first big wave. I try to turn those nerves or reframe it in my mind to like, I think I'm excited. I think I'm excited. There's an author by the name of Simon Sinek, and I think I got that from him, was taking those nerves and just reframing how you're approaching it into excitement. And technically you're excited. I'm excited to knock this door. Like the curiosity behind what's behind this door. What's this person's story? Or when you're talking to a complete stranger, like there's a story to be had with everybody. So I would say just reframing initial raw emotions into learning yourself and how can I apply that to be productive in life. So
I think a lot of that obviously transfers to doors. A lot of people are so outcome focused. Like they're so like you made the example of like, okay, trying to drop in on your first wave. Well, the nerves a lot of times come from I want to do good. I want to do it. But when you're learning something, the outcome is uncertain. Just like selling, like Taylor says this a lot, where it's like people can say you can't control, you can influence, but you can't control them. Yeah. So it's like when I knock a door, all I can do is put in, and then they're gonna do their thing. They're gonna respond as well. And so with if I'm so focused on I have to sell this person, a lot of time it impacts your performance. You can't like play loose, right? Like when you're I've seen people, like I love seeing experts. You mentioned Sean Watson. Like if you've ever watched Sean, like I'm gonna try something, you watch him kind of like, oh, I'm going to try to do like this backside. Like we were snowboarding once and he's like, hey, I'm going to try to like board slide this rail. And you kind of watch him go up to it. And it's like, just kind of like is figuring it out. But his confidence isn't attached to how well he does it on the first time. Yeah. It's, I'm just going to keep doing this and then eventually you can do it. But if you're so focused on not looking stupid in front of people or landing it the first try, your performance is impacted and your curiosity or your willingness to like try and go down. Like it takes reps. I told this story the other day, but I remember my son, my oldest, when he was learning to kickflip his skateboard. Yeah. He was out in front of the house and he had like tried it. And he came in and he's like, I just can't kickflip. And I was like, well, how many times did you try? And he's like 20.
Yeah.
And I made this up, but I was like, oh, it takes 85 tries to kickflip.
Yeah.
And I could see his mind be like, oh.
Yeah.
So he went out and he
reframed
gave it
it.
another 30 and now he can kickflip.
Yeah.
And it's like, you just kind of, it's like that
awesome.
reframing thing
Yeah.
where it's like, I think that with doors all the time. Like people come back and like, I didn't get any.
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of people are like, well, what's your pitch? Like, the first question is generally, how many pitches did you give?
Yeah.
Replay it in your mind. You might have been out there for 4 hours, but think, okay, well that person was, and then there was, okay, so I pitched 2, and you're like, well, it takes 10.
Yeah.
You didn't fail. It takes longer than that. And you're like, oh, and then you keep going through it, but that's the growth mindset thing that allows you to stay in it long enough to get the result.
Yeah.
Versus never try because you are so like, you have this need to do well.
I think it's a constant reminder too. Like I would say, no one's perfect. I know for sure I'm not perfect. There's times where I find myself questioning my ability, whether it's in knocking doors or, say working out in the gym. Like, hey, am I going to do well in this exercise? But with knocking doors in particular, it's just a constant refreshing reminder to yourself. Like when you're in that state of like kind of fear or uncertainty of just like, oh man, wow, I am dry today. Like nothing is happening. Nothing is landing. These people hate me. What's going on? And then it's like, wait a sec. I've been out here for 3 hours. I've only ever really spoken to 2 people.
Right.
It's just a numbers game. You can
data.
create a game,
Yeah.
create a game behind it, and it's just a constant reminder to have fun.
What kinds of things do you do? Like, I really want the people to, you're somebody that went from, you've been here 2.5 years, you hit franchise the first time last quarter, right?
Yeah.
So I really want to, like, for those that are listening to this that are doing good, but haven't quite broken through to the level that you have, I want them to like, maybe be taking away from this, like what they need to do.
Yeah.
So what things did you do to gamify it? I know I have certain things that when I'm knocking full time, like I'll have these little games and tracking things that I do, but what are some of yours?
Honestly, for myself, Ty, I was coming out of being a performance pro. So it was my first quarter out of being a performance pro. So my pipeline was next to nothing.
Yeah, you were helping other people get established. Yeah.
And I think, with the performance pro role, that created a whole new level of confidence, say, in the close, the VC aspect or account management. But when you take that, I want to say, that speed governor off yourself, or those self-limiting beliefs in terms of what's possible, you really find what you're capable of. And what I mean by that is, if you think you're capable of closing 1 deal a week or 2 deals a week, if that's what you're defining yourself as, then that's probably what it's going to be. And I'm not saying that everybody has it in them like, oh, I can just go out tomorrow and close 6 deals a day. But yeah, you probably do. You may not believe it. You may have to prove to yourself, I'm a 3 deal a week kind of guy, or I'm a 4 deal a week kind of guy before you go and close things. But honestly, I think it's truthfully like the thoughts you're having in your mind, it really comes out in your actions. If you say I'm tired, you're probably tired. If you say, I'm probably not going to lift up this weight, or I'm probably not going to catch this wave, it's probably true. You're almost determining the outcome. So with doors, it's just kind of going in open-minded and not giving yourself that safety of saying, you know what, I'm only going to stay out till 7. Some nights, like, you're going to stay out till 9. Sometimes you're going to stay out till 10 with a customer. So just taking off those self-limiting beliefs, I think, is the first place to start. In terms of gamifying it, little things. So we use an app, Taros, for prospecting. As silly as it is, but my custom dispositions, I put a little present emoji above homes that I want to knock. So when I'm out in the hood,
little treat.
Yeah, like what's going on behind that door? It could be something, I don't know what's going on behind this door. It could be a little present. It could be pretty sweet. So little things.
Some presents you don't want. Some presents you do want.
Yeah, you definitely not. You put a different disposition for those presents, But no, really, quite literally, just being silly like that, making it a game. So a big part of it, I think, is really where I found the biggest change was when I truthfully embrace the culture and the people around me. So for 2 years, to be honest with you, like I was still identifying with the fact of like, well, maybe I think I'm a solar door knocker. I think this is for me. And then when it kind of flipped the switch was when like, yep, this is what I'm doing. This is where I belong. I'm around the right people. I'm going to really embrace that.
Isn't it when you, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
What emotion do you feel when you make that decision?
It's 100% absolute certainty and confidence.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah. Well, just because you're not doing it alone any longer.
Dude, confidence is jet fuel to a salesperson.
Yeah.
And I had a very similar experience because I when I'd first started doing this, it was a means to an end, and I'm not like them, and I'm going to go do something else. And so you kind of, even if it's subconsciously, you don't fully go all in. But I remember when I said, this is the last job I'll ever have. It was literally like the rest of my body is like, let's go.
Calm.
There's calm, and then there's confidence. It's like I'm more relaxed, and I'm more driven.
I think, I think too, I just was having this talk with a rep on the drive down here, but it's like everyone wants to live a purposeful, fulfilling life. I really believe that. Like no one wakes up and goes, hey, I want to waste my life.
Yeah.
But what happens is if you're not all in, you're not decided, you don't say, hey, I'm just going to figure it out and do it and have that resolve.
Yeah.
You also have in the background this like silent battle that's always tugging you, saying like, so you go get rejected on a few doors, and there's something there like, am I in the right spot? Or you go like, man, I want to get promoted faster. I'm not promoted, and that's like, oh, could I get promoted faster here? And so there's this other thing pulling you if you don't have that resolution, I feel like. And so it's like, it was crazy when Chris hit franchise. So we get all our guys at the start of the quarter and go, hey, who are kind of the guys that could hit franchise? Who has the rollover? Chris he just came out of performance, and then he hit franchise first in the region. And when we did his interview and like sat down because he got promoted to team lead that same quarter, I was like, dude, just out of nowhere, you hit franchise. And he's like, I forget how you said it, but like, I kind of hit it on accident. And I was like, what? You're the first person I've talked to that, but it was that thing. It was like, there was just this switch of all in behavior, and it like, the results came almost effortlessly after that decision was made, is what it looked like to you.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. And, by accident, I was just applying myself to the journey that I knew I was on now. And I think it comes down to when you make that switch of like, this is where I am, this is what I'm doing, you find yourself just fully committed in the times where in the past, you may have not been so committed before, which is, maybe I'll go home at 6. Well, now I'm asking myself, like, what am I going to do? I'm just going to go home and sit there. Like, I'm going to keep working. Like, that's what I'm doing. Or I'm going to go to the office and train because that's what I do. This is who I am. And I just find yourself just subconsciously or consciously just embracing the people around me. I have nothing but great things to say about the Flow region, both the leadership team, from everybody that's come and gone, to the people that I surround myself on a daily basis. We have a great group of guys in the San Diego Central office, along with the San Diego South and San Diego North and Palm Springs. So just the culture that's being built, embracing that versus holding it at a shoulder's length or an arm's reach, just kind of being like, okay, well, this is my work, and I'll come to work at certain times a week, and then I'll go see my people, but like really embracing that and being present in the moment, getting to know the people around you.
It's crazy how when you do that, I think you guys both kind of touched on it, you open yourself up to the stuff that you're missing. So a person that's doing, like, you look at like a premier rep, someone that's installing 10 a quarter and has the pipeline to keep that up. They're not talking to more people than a franchise rep generally, and they're not working any harder than a franchise rep generally. The franchise rep has a little bit different of a mindset, and they open themselves. When they commit and go all in, and when that's a real goal, they start to do franchise things and think franchise thoughts. And so then it's like, oh, that one that you got at 6:30, you actually did that 3 times in the quarter. You don't realize that because they were 3 weeks apart. And then one of them led to a referral, and then the other one gave you 2. That's the difference. Literally, like the it's not like, oh, dude, I have to do twice as many to hit franchise. No, it's exponential. Like you're already out there enough. You're already talking to people, and maybe what they do is they say, okay, well, in the morning, I've been talking to the RunX Tour teams about one of the tips of how I would win this contest is I would maximize that morning, because the morning time, a lot of people think that okay, that's the time where I'm going to manage my accounts.
Yeah.
We have a lot of resources to help you manage accounts. You have a CX Pro that you
Yeah.
could literally in 5 minutes send a message and say, hey, I'm concerned about these 3. They seem to be held up. Can you help me? Okay, now those are managed.
Yep.
Managing your schedule is, hey, I talked to that one guy yesterday whose wife wasn't home, and he was supposed to text me and he didn't. I'm going to text that guy real quick. Where's the electric bill? I've had this design that I need to show to this person's husband,
Yep.
and they keep ghosting me. I'm gonna try and put them on the schedule for tonight. And they're these long shots you take, but if you take an hour every morning and you say, hey, I have your electric bill or I have your design. I know you guys were on vacation and I know you said you didn't want to do this until the holidays were over, but we're doing this promo right now and I'm literally meeting with somebody 3 doors down. On my way to my car, I'm just gonna drop it off so you can see what we've done so far. Anyway, if I do that 5 times, I'm gonna get a shot with one of them.
Yeah.
3 shots, I'm gonna get an install.
Yeah.
So if you do that, right? If I create 5 shots, you'll do that, every 3 days.
Yeah.
That's an extra like 5 or 6 installs a quarter.
Yeah. 100%.
Right? And it's just like, it's not any more work. You're both sitting in that chair managing your schedule or managing your accounts for the same amount of time. But a franchise person just opens themselves up to, had I not sent that, had I not got that person on schedule, had I not talked to him as I was leaving and his wife pulled into the driveway, had I not done, that is the difference. And so again, I feel like you just like kind of see opportunities that you didn't see before and you start, I don't know how to say it better than that.
No, yeah, you're opening your eyes to what's possible. I mean, I can look back, whether it's previous quarters or even last quarter, and I look back at each customer and I can almost identify like, well, if I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't have had that. Like it's the just kind of staying in the fight, not knowing what's going to happen. Like I didn't go out that Saturday. I mean, I went out with the intentionality of like, I'm going to go find something, but it's not always going to go your way. You can't control the result, but you have to focus on what you can control. I find a lot of the times, whether it's door knocking or just in your personal life, like what can I control? And then typically the results will be attracted to you.
Yeah, it's like golf. Like when I go golfing with somebody that's decent, and then we look at scores, I never keep score. But I actually, my brother-in-law made me keep score on Thanksgiving like 2 or 3 years ago. He wanted me to keep score a lot more than I didn't want to keep score, so he won. Yeah. And I shot a 99, which is like, all right, that's where I'm at. I tracked every freaking I tapped it or I swung at that one twice, whatever. Yeah. And then I look at the other people and they're like, okay, you shot an 84. And I'm like, I don't feel like you played better than me.
Yeah.
I really don't. Like some of my shots, actually, you could have told me that you got a 95 too, and I would have thought that was right. But then you play back the game and it's like, oh, well, yeah, I 2-putted where you 1-putted. Yeah. Or it's like, I mean, literally all it has to be is I touched that thing 8 times more over the span of 18. Every other hole, I touched it 1 more. It's nothing. Yeah. But then at the end, it's 9 or 10 strokes, which is massive. Yeah. That's more than 10%. Yeah. Same exact thing happens with franchise where it's like, okay, you went out that Saturday. You could have gone out that Saturday and gone home at 4 and felt confident that, hey, I tried. I did something I didn't want to do. But then you stayed out long. And if it's a good product and you're a sharp dude, if you do this enough times, you will find somebody, right? And so it's like, it's not going to be that way every time, but one time it was like that. Well, it's 13 weeks in a quarter. You only have to have 3 of those situations you just laid out, and it's 12 more installs. 12.
Yeah, and that's the game. Yeah. That's the game that you're playing. And I think, looking at what this job provides, it gives you an opportunity to remain, I think, to myself, like right now, I guess, relentlessly optimistic because, I think there's a lot to be said about folks who are positive, like overly positive. And I think that's great. But like, there's also, I think in real life and in this job, there's going to be some negative. And it's about experiencing both of those, the positive and the negatives, but remaining just completely 100% optimistic in terms of your thinking, which is, hey, this may have sucked or this may have not gone my way. This operations ordeal has caused an issue. But, hey, you know what? Tomorrow there's that house I really wanted to knock or that homeowner that I've been meaning to catch up.
That little present you got out there.
On Teros that I have.
I wish we could see the impact psychologically of that little
a little brainwave spike, a little chemical boost.
When I get to click create lead on Sunrun 1, it's like the best feeling ever. So just from getting the bill and AC.
I love that, dude.
It's just remaining optimistic. Like I said, it's about embracing the negative and the positive. But optimism is something I think you can't really take away.
It's awesome because that's kind of what you were saying earlier, like reframing your mind. A lot of people would see something and go, dude, this is going to create fear or angst.
Yeah.
But you're seeing the opportunity. It's like I have this like vivid memory in my brain right now from growing up racing with my dad.
Yeah.
And we were at this track and they built this new big jump and
Yep.
I hadn't hit it yet. It was like brand new.
Yeah.
And we're walking the track before the race. So it's like, well, I guess we're just going to have to hit it in the race.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the track, there's this dad with this like 6-year-old.
Yeah.
And he's racing the little 65s or whatever. And I just hear the dad go, hey, you got to take this turn outside, hold it wide open, lean back on your seat, and click to third gear right about here, and you'll do it or whatever. And I'm like thinking, dude, this dad is going to kill this little kid. Like,
Yeah.
what a psychopath, you know? I'm just sitting, I'm like, what a nut. But
Yeah.
the thing is, the kid doesn't have that fear built in, and he doesn't have, and so he just did the thing. He just did exactly what happened.
Yep.
I watched their little race. I'm like all intrigued. I go over by the fence, and I'm just watching, and he just perfectly executes. And I like, it sounds a lot like that, what you're saying. It's like, dude, there's this thing of, I know I'm going to figure it out. Someone's doing it. Someone's jumping it. Like, I could do it. And it is doable. And so when you apply that to the doors, because everyone wants that magic. Everyone wants that thing where it's like, dude, I wish my last door of the day was a 3-for-1, you know? But it's like, well, yeah, but the magic won't happen if you don't do the thing of just like, all right, third gear, I guess we're going to go. Like, okay, I'm going to do that last door. And I think for you, what's been fun watching you, Chris, is these principles that usually take a really long time to develop, you just like embody them. Like, dude, to come right out of performance with no pipe and then just be daily, and I kind of want to talk about this with you because I think this is important to you, but like almost competing with yourself. It's like there's this thing where it seems like you just kind of go out, you're on mission, and it's like, all right, like no one would know. I could bounce right now. Yeah. But Chris would let himself down, I think, in that. It's like there's a real thing where you're like, I have to do this for me. Like I gotta beat yesterday. Yeah. And then it just compounds and folds in on each other, and your results have just come up so quick. So can you talk about that a little? Like what does that look like for you to like compete with yourself on the daily?
Oh, it's horrible. Grant. Yeah, it's horrible. Absolutely horrible. No, I say that in like good fun, but I just find it's when competing with other folks, there's a lot, you know, it's fun to have competition, but I find that it's very short-lived and, you know, you're going to run out of steam. But when you compete against yourself, I find if you can just sustain this constant one-upping of yourself, competition, you're looking to win, hands down. You always want to win. And you're going to fail as well. But when you compete against someone else, it's not sustainable, I find. It's great, and I think it's good to do in the short term, but when you are constantly reevaluating and trying to one-up yourself, I mean, there's no limits. There's really no limits. And in terms of a game, it's just, man, you could win and beat your old numbers, but next week, guess what? Your new numbers are now your old numbers, and now you have to one-up yourself again. And yeah, I think it is about holding yourself to a certain standard, and I would say it just kind of at the end of a day or end of a week or end of a quarter, end of a year, can you look back and be proud of the work you put in? And I think it really just comes down to, did you put in work? And whether that's into your professional career, did you spend time with your family? Did you give more than you get? Just really kind of doing like a self-audit of, am I better than the year previous? You know, we're here for a limited amount of time. So why not try to make the most of each year? And that goes in line with like, did I try something new? Did I challenge myself? Just asking yourself these questions. And you can't really lie to yourself. You know, you can, I mean, there's people I think that definitely can like reframe it in a way, but at the end of the day, you kind of know the truth. So, and it's just sitting with yourself when you're all alone, especially if they're on the doors, like, did I knock enough doors? Did I give an honest effort? Did I make it out to the beach to learn surfing? So just really sitting with yourself at the end of the day and asking, hey, did I do what I set out to do? And that's a constant challenge. I don't think that ever ends. That's not something where I've reached the pinnacle and that's it. That's something that I find is sustainable, because you can always one up yourself, and there's always something new to chase, and there's always a new goal. So, and I'm not saying it's always perfect. Like, there's times where I definitely do give in, and it's kind of, I think baseball is a great sport to relate the doors to. You have professional baseball players making millions of dollars who fail more times than they succeed when they're at bat. You know, with a great baseball players, if they hit the ball 3 times out of 10, they're considered a god. Pretty much a 300% batting average. I mean, that's something to be. I mean, when you actually think about that, that's pretty nuts. And it relates.
It's actually
so
pretty
well.
close to knocking too, right?
Yeah, it relates well to the doors.
You get 10 doors. You probably get 3 pitches off. If you could get 1 out of 3, you're really good. You're really good.
Yeah.
Right?
So that's something I constantly remind myself of, versus just kind of zoom out. Don't be so kind of consumed in the moment for a second, and just evaluate where you're at.
This is something you touched on. So I've been writing, guys. I've been writing stuff down. I'm all inspired over here. The franchise mindset, though, like, you didn't hit franchise because you just all of a sudden started performing. Like, you didn't get more skilled from one quarter to the next, really. And even if you did, it's not the reason you hit franchise.
100%.
You're talking and thinking like somebody that performs at that level. And so one of the things I wrote down, and this is something I've believed for a really long time, is you're successful to the degree that you can impress yourself. Yeah. Right. So I did this thing last night, and I, just as you were talking about, and Grant, as you said, Chris knows, like, we always say, if you want something, score it. Right. Like, and that's how it is in my own life. If I want to be fit, I know I have to score it, because I have to give myself the actual, like, tangible data to beat my justifying mind, which is why Taros is so good. Like, a real pro wants the data. An amateur doesn't want the data. But like, if I'm going to start running, I want to track the runs to see, am I getting better or am I getting worse? And my confidence is based on whether I ran or not whether I ran fast. I know I'm going to have good races and bad races. And so last night I got home late, and I have this thing because I am addicted to hot tubbing. Guys, my name's Ty. I'm an addict. I will sit in a hot tub for 3 hours. It's the only place where my brain really turns off. And so sometimes I'll just float around in that water, and I'll load up on my dopamine from YouTube. I catch up on everything. But a lot of times after I spend 3 hours in a hot tub, I get out and I don't like the way I feel. I'm like, that was a waste of time. Now I'm going to sleep 4.5 hours tonight. I can't perform at my best. Anyway, so I go through that cycle. And I'm not just kidding. It's actually a thing where I'm like, I will tell my wife, I'll leave my drink inside the house and be like, this is so that I don't stay in there for 3 hours. I'm gonna and then I'm just like parched and floating in an hour and a half, and I'm like, I'm addicted. But I've started doing this thing where I have to earn the heat. And so before I go out in the hot tub, I have to sit in the cold plunge for at least 3.5 minutes. And when I get out, I have to sit in the cold plunge for 3.5 minutes. And so after a long day when my brain isn't as resilient and I'm tired, that cold plunge is a lot harder. And so I've just found that it's like, oh, now I'm hot tubbing for 45 minutes and I don't feel like I wasted all my time, because I track it. I track every day that I cold plunge. So when you talk about like, hey, I have to impress myself, that feeling that I have, I went from doing the same activity and feeling like, I'm kind of wasting time, to doing that activity and being like, dude, who's cold plunging at midnight? I feel good. Like, that was hard. I didn't want to do it. I did not want to get in that cold water last night after sitting in 104. I did not want to get in 42, but I did it, and nobody knows. Well, now everybody knows. See, like, this is, you see what I did there? Like a casual brag. Like an obvious flex.
Just kind of always cold plunging.
But you do 3 minutes. I do 3:30. It's no big deal. It's 4 degrees colder. No, but but I know, like, I would have felt bad or I would have felt good based on the game that I made for myself, where it's like, okay, if I hot tub, at least I have to earn it and do cold too. And so I would love to talk about, like, you talked about your mindset and things like that. I actually have a couple tangible things. I'd love to hear yours that I'm thinking of now that I would do when I was knocking full time. So one of them was when I first moved to California, I like to wear, like, the hats of the markets that I'm in. So we're a Boston hat today, but I was just with the Boston guys, so I was feeling it. But when I came to California, I was like, I need to get some California hats. I need to get some like LA hats or whatever. But then I was like, wait, every 12 ACs, I'll get a hat. And it's like, I mean, door-to-door selling for a long time. I can buy a hat, you know? And it was one of those things where it's like, I remember one week on Saturday night on my way home, I was like, cool, I'll get a hat.
Yeah.
Little treat, little present in
Yeah,
the
a little
neighborhood.
present.
You know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
something there, right?
I remember on Saturdays I wouldn't eat until I had 2.
Yeah.
And it's like some of those days, it's like 4 o'clock, and I'm like, I could go. I have 10 on the week.
Right.
I could go to Chipotle, but it's like, no, you gotta,
Yeah,
don't eat till
yeah.
you get 2, and you get 2.
Yep.
Like if you get a reward where you get lunch after you do
Yep.
get 2, like you get 2. So like it's funny that like little things like that.
Yeah.
I would go home at 5 on a Saturday if I'd hit my goal. If I didn't, I'd just stay out until I couldn't anymore. And it's like they're not punishment, they're games. And so then it's like if I would have gone to Chipotle. I ate at the same Chipotle in Ventura every single week. But if I would have gone to Chipotle at 1,
Yeah.
but then they discontinued the corn tacos, the little corn tacos.
Yeah, okay.
It's like that was my daily.
Yeah. How dare you.
But if I went to Chipotle at 1 and I only had 1 account,
Yeah.
I would feel
You don't get to eat that day.
yeah. But if I go there and I have 2 accounts and it's 4, I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, dude, that was hard for you and you did it.
Yeah.
And so those little things, like if you don't have those in your sales, they seem stupid, but
Yeah.
honestly, it's the difference maker. If it gets me to get 1 more before I go eat, if it gets me to get 1 more before I get the hat, then 1, it's a little bit more exciting. It's a little bit more fun.
Yeah.
But when you impress yourself, now it means something.
It's like hacking your brain though to think right. You know, it's like I was talking to our team about this yesterday. It's like, dude, make the job fun again.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we used to play like a phrase game where we would all like put on the text what the phrase was for the day, and it was some ridiculous thing that was totally HR appropriate.
Yeah, of
and
course,
we
of
would,
course, yeah.
and then whoever could like transition in a house.
Yeah.
Record like in your sit down, you're
Yeah.
like sitting there like, yeah, so we ship a lot of power in from out of state, and then you'd say this ridiculous phrase, and
It
whoever said
reverberates through my soul or whatever.
yeah.
Like, ding.
Yeah, and then everyone who,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Then everyone who would like post it in got lunch that day or whatever. Like we'd go and lunch was on whoever was leading it, and it was, but it made it where you don't want to do that all the time because you're probably going to affect your sales numbers if you're being a knucklehead in every single home. But what it did was it made all of us just want to work all day. Like everyone had fun.
Yeah.
Working, and so it just I feel like it's so important. So what kind of stuff do you have, Chris? Like what are the things you do on the daily out in Hood that like to gamify,
Well,
keep it going?
Going in line with what you guys said, I think we have to have the ability in this job, what I've realized is to have the approach to having delayed gratification. You mentioned earlier, we have so much readily available to us instantly. If we want something, we can order it. It'll be at our house next day, 2 hours, whatever it is. If we want to look something up, have entertainment on hand, we've got it instantly. In this job, I think you really have to be okay with and sit with the fact that, hey, my efforts now will lead to reward in a month, in 2 months, in 6 months, in 5 years. It's having that long-term approach. So to get through the day-to-day, you really do have to gamify it. You have to have fun. You have to find reward from, did I work hard today? Did I find something silly to post in my group chats with my other reps? Did I have fun at the meeting? You have to have little rewards. For me, like, it's so boring, but like, I enjoy, one of my biggest things I love to do, I just love going out to eat with family and friends, and I love for them not to have to think about it. We're fortunate enough in this job to be in a position to take care of the people we have around us, and I love that feeling of, hey, if you can just show up, that's fine. Take care of it. Let's just have fun. Let's be in the moment. So for me, whether it's sushi with my girlfriend Heather during the week, whether it's taking my dad, who my parents have been pivotal in my life. I have everything I am, I owe to them and my family. So just being able to give back, that's huge. That's huge for me to say like, hey, I'll take you guys out to dinner. So that really means the world to me. In Hood, honestly, just using your group chats, leaning on the folks that you're in the chat with, like whether it's posting, I mean, we go to so many homes in so many different neighborhoods, and there's so many crazy things to be seen on the doors.
Yeah, the neighbors don't know. The neighbors don't know what's in that house 3 doors down. You know.
Yeah, it's hilarious, right? So just being able to share that story of like, oh man, guess what I saw in this house? You know,
this guy's got this samurai sword collection.
It's
you know the guy too. You know sword guy,
everybody
right?
Everybody knows the samurai sword guy. You know, he's practicing in the front lawn. So you have to have little moments like that you look forward to, and sharing that with the people you work with. That's what makes it funny. You get to show up to correlation, to meeting, and share those stories, and that's just what you want to keep it simple and keep it fun.
Yeah, it keeps you above it, right? Like it's almost like you do a really hard workout. You never come back and you're like, that was too hard. You always come back and you're like,
Yeah.
there's an energy there. One thing that I wanted to touch on real quick, and then I have a question that I'm interested in how you'll answer. Back to this little kid on the 65. Just sending. I love when like those races start because it sounds like just like a swarm of bees, like these little senders just boosting into the atmosphere. But the crazy thing is when you're scared to hit that jump, when you're scared to knock that door, what are you scared of? You're scared you're going to loop out and like you're going to break your femur and it's going to be a disaster. And then the guy behind you is going to hit you and, you know, all these worst case scenarios. But then you watch that whole day. How many people do it? How many people actually get hurt badly on that jump? Honestly, mostly none, right? The worst case scenario never happens. Instead, what happens is all these other people that have never hit this jump because it's brand new, hit it at least 20 times in their 20-minute moto or whatever. And overwhelmingly, everybody's fine, even though they've never done it before. But our brain puts the worst case scenario in front of us. 100%. And so I was thinking, I got Inception's one of my favorite movies. You guys seen Inception? So I was nerding out in the hot tub on YouTube about Inception one night, not last
the
night.
hot tub sessions. Wow.
And I was watching this, the clickbait that says like the 10 things you didn't know about Inception.
I'll click on that all day.
Yeah, because I think I know them.
Yeah.
But I don't.
No.
Then anyway, so I'm watching it, and they start this movie, and they say the one thing you have to know about Inception is Cobb. Cobb narrates the movie. That's Leonardo DiCaprio's character. They say Cobb is an untrustworthy narrator, and it's like, I've watched that movie so many times and just trusted him. I just watch what he puts before me. I never question it once. And it makes me think that when the worst case, you have to know that your mind is an untrustworthy narrator. It will tell you stuff like, hey, that person that just pulled up watched you get rejected on that last door, so don't talk to them because they just saw you get turned down. That's not true.
That is so true.
But your brain tells you that. Or it'll say something like, oh, like, all right, nobody's home. I don't want to waste doors, so I'm going to go get some food and come back. As if not knocking is better than knocking. But your brain will tell you that. And so it's interesting because you've all touched on it. Like these thoughts came through, but the worst case scenario never happens. Like, and when you say to yourself, I'm just going to try. I have a growth mindset. I'm going to see if I can knock 10 doors. I'm going to see if I can get 10 no's before 5. It eliminates that. And then the other thing is your mind is an untrustworthy narrator. It's not your friend at all times. And so you have to be able to question it where it's like, that's bananas. I knock, if I see someone get out of their car, I talk to them within 10 seconds and then it overrides that piece.
Well, and the way you see it is how it's going to go, right? It's like, I always think in door to door, it's interesting because we were talking about this earlier. It's like someone will go try a new hood. And it's like, dude, it's like the pitch went through a time machine. Like, it's so easy here and da-da-da. And what's crazy is the people who work that hood go try the other guy's hood. And he's like, bro, it's lay down city out here. And it's like, and then the reps are calling me being like, dude, my old hood, it is picked through. There's not a chance, And it's funny because I went, when I moved down to San Diego recently, my team was there was some chatter about Chula Vista just being wiped. Like, oh, dude.
Well, and that's where people would get shrunk to back in the day. Like if people didn't,
So
you were around for the shrinking. It was like if people didn't hit their weekly quota, their territory would get shrinked.
But everyone thinks of it that way. And I heard this narrative. I'm coming out from the desert. Ops were slower. It's really hot. I'm like, bro, Chula Vista. That's where I sold windows way back in the day. I'm like, this is going to be. Chula Vista's my people. I love Chula Vista. And it's crazy because we got there and I'm like, guys, look how amazing this is. There's literally 200 cars on. I can't even find parking. You know how many pitches we're going to get out? We're going to pitch so many people right now. Like, dude, look how old these power lines are. Like, let's just talk about that. And it was crazy because we got like 4 ACs out of 5 pitches or something. Everyone was home. It was like 2 hours. We'd already talked to 9 people or so. It was like, and it was funny because the reps I was with were convinced Chula Vista's wiped. And I'm like, dude, what's crazy, guys, is when I sold windows here 15 years ago, windows. We were all saying, man, this hood's wiped. No one else will buy another window. And guess what? That window company is still there selling windows right now. Like, door to door is the weirdest thing, but that reframing in your mind, you're like an expert at it. But that is such a powerful tool to be able to take the exact same thing. Like, we're both looking at the same neighborhood. One person comes in and goes, dude, look at all these wide open roofs and this and that. And we're in San Diego. This is the best. They're going to smash that day.
Yeah.
The person who walks in is like, bro, this picked over, gonna have MPUs. It's like,
Yep.
dude, the very first time someone hints at rejection,
Yeah.
you're gonna be like, see, told you, this place just. And so,
Yeah.
it's you've like learned again. You have these principles dialed, and it's really good to like hear you talk through them, because I think it's just gonna help so many reps like think right. You were gonna ask him actually a question.
Yeah, here's the
first.
question.
Yeah.
Are you ready?
Hit me.
So have
I
one
noticed
too.
you have a split knuckle. Is it a door knocking injury there? You literally comes to his franchise interview with a bloody knuckle. That's hardcore, man. Good job.
Yeah, after hours on the doors, I gotta go let out some steam. I'm just playing. No.
What do you feel like has uniquely qualified you to do this job? When you look at like it's maybe a strange world that you find yourself in.
Yeah.
You're really good at it.
No.
What do you think, looking back in your life, has helped you develop the skills or the mental thought patterns to uniquely qualify you to do this at this point in your life?
First thing that comes to mind is not being the first one to speak at various points in my life. And I think what I mean by that is you first have to observe before you do something, becoming an observer. For example, earlier I mentioned I'm the youngest of 20-something grandchildren. I was the youngest. No one cares what the youngest has to say. No one, you're just go do this, go do that. You're doing that. But like from a very early state, I was observing what everybody was doing around me. When you're a kid, you're observing your older cousins. You're observing what they're doing. You're observing what choices they make. And to me, it allowed for me to learn from afar. As you get older, you start to put into practice things you want to do in ways, you see something, you're like, oh, I think I could do it this way. Just trying it, being curious. Like, well, I think I could be more efficient. Taking that approach in terms of how much do you observe, how much do you take in, how much do you learn from everybody around you. I think there's something to be learned from everybody's story. That has empowered me to have the skill set to be able to apply myself towards this job. So first and foremost, become an observer, and then create a plan for yourself and apply it. Like my uncle, who I'm very near and dear to, he gave me some advice before going off to school, which is like, hey, you're about to embark on your life. Number one thing is just be bold. Be bold. If you're going to do it 110%. You're going to fall flat on your face more times than you're going to succeed. But the matter of fact is you made the choice to do it. Whether you succeed or fail, it's out of your control. But be bold in your decisions and run straight into the fire. So I think having that mentality has helped me, whether it's something as uncertain as going into a field such as door knocking. To be honest, I still feel new, and I love the feeling of still being new at something. And there's so much to learn. There's so much ahead of you. But what's embodied me to be, or empowered me to be at this point, and the success that I'm fortunate enough to have found, is I think just committing 110% to knocking the door, doing the schedule, going to the meetings, but just be bold in your actions, be bold in your decisions, and be bold in terms of how you present yourself.
Tony Hawk was our first guest on this show.
Yeah.
And we did solar for his house, and I was sitting at his living room table.
Yeah.
And remember, like, when Tony Hawk started skateboarding was not cool.
Yeah.
Skateboarding's cool now, but it wasn't cool back then. They'd get made fun of and stuff at school and all that kind of stuff. And he's built a really good life for himself, obviously. And he has this kind of like chandelier over the family's like dining table, and it's a ring. It's got this, it's like this wooden like ring, and then it's got these like cables that go up to it that suspend it. And on the inside of the wooden ring, it has that, it's like an old quote or proverb, and it says, "Fortune favors the bold."
Love
So
it.
every time the Hawk family sits and eats,
Yeah.
they sit under this sign that's like, remember, like, be bold. Like, I thought of that. This was such great advice from your uncle, because what you essentially said is be curious, but be bold. Those two things usually don't, like, that's an awesome juxtaposition. It's the right, like, tempered thing where it's like, ask the question, don't be the first to speak, but move with purpose.
Yeah.
Well, and
Awesome
it's pretty
answer.
cool to watch, because it's like exactly what Chris has done in Central. So I look at it from the outside. It's like you've been the silent assassin. Like you're just like humbly over there, putting your head down. You have that, like, you're definitely kind of just soaking it all in, taking all the feedback. You're really coachable, but then you're just kind of like quietly going to work and turning a lot of heads. It was one of the coolest experiences. So we just promoted a bunch of people in Flow, and right before we did, we were going through all these up and comers. They didn't know it was about to happen, but we were kind of going through just like talking about why like we're happy they're in the region and what they're doing. And when we would get to certain guys, like maybe someone else, another leader would jump in and go, hold on, I got something to say about so-and-so too. And it was just kind of this like encouraging, really cool team moment. And when we got to Chris, I think 8 or 9 people talked. Like everyone just stopped and was just, it went on. It was like, it was getting like, I mean, guys, we got a few more of these to do, because everyone just kept being like, man, the one thing with Chris is he always does what he says he's going to do. The one thing with Chris is he's the best teammate. The one thing with Chris, and people just kept going on and on. And so it's cool because you can't fake that. And what I see, it's like you have a genuine, authentic humility that's like soaking up as much as you can. Like even the way I think you frame that is like, dude, people do it. They've done it. Like I always thought that when I met Ty and Turnbull, it was like, hey, these guys, I don't know how to manage my time the way Ty does, but he does. So I could probably learn that, right? And like, I feel like you do that with your leadership group, with just the organization, and then you just quietly go to work boldly. Like you push really hard when it gets to that personal journey of door to door, and it's awesome. Like you're doing exactly the things that I think are your foundational like values, and it's probably why you're so stoked in the job right now. But it's awesome.
No, I appreciate that, Grant. I think to be quite honest, I know when you speak a lot of time, just like from seeing you come into the office over the years, a lot of the time you're speaking from a place of like knowing your father. Mm-hmm. And I relate to that a lot. You know, my parents both, I think as a kid, you don't really understand. You don't really understand, where you're coming from. You're just living life. You're having fun. But as you start to grow up, I look back and I realize, your parents did a lot for you. I'm fortunate enough to have parents who were there, who went to work every day, who made things happen. Father was military, so deploying multiple times. Mother just ruthlessly worked her career. And I think it stems from that, of just kind of having that influence at a very young age of go to work, you can take care of the ones you love, and pretty thankful at the end of the day. So a lot of inspiration comes from my parents. So I always love hearing the stories about you and your dad. He sounds just like an awesome
weird. It is weird. You go back and you recognize the impact.
Yeah.
And then it's like, dude, don't waste that impact. Like go impact others. And that's what's so cool again is like with Central, I look at like Central and South splitting. It's like that was kind of hard for everyone for a while. We needed some people to step up into those leadership roles. And I even think of Central like 6 months ago, and it was going through some of those growing pains. Yeah. And now with you at the table and some of these other studs that are coming up right now, and Bentley and Trevor and all you guys, I mean, Mike Romano is just one of the best guys. But if you go 6 months ago, it's like everyone was kind of in that state of we're like personally figuring it out. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, there's like it's not all ironed out from the top down yet. And now because of your contribution, it's like, arguably you guys are the big dogs in the region now. The culture and vibes of the team are like all-time high. Yeah. And what's cool to me is like, once again, the silent behind the scenes leadership stuff, like all this stuff going on in here is it permeates throughout the whole team. Like it's actually really important. A lot of times I think people just think that outcome results, like it's like, no, you don't really talk about the franchise thing. Like when we said it, you're like, guys, there's people who've done way more impressive things. Like you're genuinely humble, but you're making such an impact, dude. Like it is, I just hope you recognize how significant your contribution is in Central and the reason it's so healthy. Yeah. You're just like a really big part of that, dude. It's like, it's awesome.
Oh, I appreciate it. I really do, Grant. Yeah. It's, I would say market leader Taylor Judd, when I was in the San Diego South office when it was combined.
The best.
Gosh, I swear he's we talked about it the other day, but he's the perfect combination of like Ryan Reynolds and Jack Black. Yeah, I just think that's great. But one thing I know he would say a lot of the time at the front of the office was, at some point you're going to look back and realize, you know, the time when everybody's talking about, you know, man, back in the day, or these are the day, or like just you're looking back at the
good old days.
The good old days.
Yeah.
When you realize that that's right now, I think that really hits home with just, wow, like make every moment count, and make, whether it's you're having fun with your family, you're on a trip, or am I on the door and it's 6 o'clock and am I tired? Like, let's just make this count, because you'll look back and realize like these were the good old days. And that goes for anybody in life, just like these, like there's always going to be a time you look back on and like, why can't that be now? And this is the good old time. So, you mentioned months ago when things weren't so certain, and where we've come from as an office. And I think a lot of offices could probably relate to this. The journey of climbing is typically, I find, the most fun. Once you've reached it, that's fun too, but it's just presenting yourself with new challenges. But the journey of when you're scratching and clawing and figuring things out, that's where I think I've always looked back on and realized, wow, that was actually a lot of fun. And you've learned a lot about yourself during those moments. So I still feel like we're in that moment in Sunrun as a region, as an office. It just feels it's fun to scratch and claw and figure things out, and that's what makes it a journey. So
yeah, that's growth, right? Growth is fun, and a lot of it goes back to what you're saying. It's because you're impressing yourself, right? Like you get certain feelings when you do things that you're proud of. Final tip to anybody that is doing good but hasn't quite yet crossed the line to optimum performance, to full potential. What would you say to that person?
Ask a ton of questions. Just ask questions. You don't think that you have to know everything. Don't be embarrassed to ask questions, because honestly, the only way you're going to learn or find out the answer, or to become better or figure it out for yourself, is just ask questions. And you'd be surprised the answers you get, or the people that want to help. You're not expected to know everything. At some point, you want to know a couple things, right? You know,
Eventually learn something, but
at some point, I mean, there are okay. Like, you've asked a lot of questions. Let's get you going out the door.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, because sometimes people think they have to know stuff before they go.
Yeah,
right. Like,
but ask questions.
Right.
I'd say it's just truthfully just. If you're not certain, that's okay. There's people that have been in your position before. When I came into this, I had never knocked a single door. I was scared to death to do it. But there were so many great resources within this company, and people who genuinely care, to where if you just reach out, you're going to find that there's about probably 10 other people that feel the way you do. And by you asking the question and being bold enough to do it, you're probably going to help yourself and 10 other folks. It's just going to have this ripple effect on people around you. So ask questions, and then from there, the key, apply what you've learned. You can't just ask questions and sit around with that information. Just put it into action. And whether you fall on your face or find that present behind the door, that's fine. Just take action no matter what. Like, you have to put things into action. And you can learn as you go. Ask questions, take action. Fail or succeed, like just keep repeating that process. It's typically I have found that it's a formula for good things. So
it's so logical too. Like, you think of a guy like Erico. It's like, well, he's really good at recruiting. He's really good at selling. He's really good at running meetings. He's really good at one-on-one. Like, if you're under him on the way up, it's like, dude, of course you ask that guy everything you can possibly ask. And like you said, it's like the worst thing is when you get that advice and don't apply it. It's like, okay, well, you actually have the roadmap. Yeah. And you could do it, you know? And so that's really good, man. That's a really good answer.
It was a great answer. Okay, let's go to work. Appreciate you being on, dude.
Thanks.
Congratulations on your success, and lots of good things ahead. Keep moving forward.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. If you're listening to this and interested in joining our teams, DM us on Instagram at Run the League.
What are you waiting for? Run the league, shoot us a DM, and let's get going.
Good job.